This is the Nike Phantom 6 High, which is a little bit like what you'd get if the Phantom GX1 and Lunar 2 had a child. But the big question here is if you should pay that extra bit of money compared to the Phantom 6 Low in order to essentially just get a higher sock collar and a lace cover. Well, in today's video, I'll tell you, of course, everything you need to know about the Phantom 6 High, and of course also tell you what it does well and not so well to hopefully help you decide if you should buy a pair of these or the Phantom 6 Lows on unisportstore.com. Because I'm JayMike and, well, you know the rest, so let's get going. So the Phantom 6 High is pretty much identical to the low version, but comes with a dynamic fit collar, which is a fancy word for the knitted sock, and a lace cover made partly out of grip knit. And just like on the Phantom GX1 DF, it's made with an inner fly knit base and then has this outer shell and lace cover made out of grip knit. And a bit of fly knit. So just like on the first generation of the Phantom GX, you get a fly knit midfoot and heel, and then a forefoot made out of grip knit, which then has these little rips that are inspired by the Phantom GX2 and the Lunar 2 engineered into the forefoot itself. And from a fit and touch point of view, that is a pretty interesting combination. Now I'm gonna leave the touch aspect parked on the side for a little bit, because when we're talking fit, the Phantom 6 High here is just, it's a pretty interesting, easy-going little boot. And I'm grabbing the GX1 here because if you remember the GX1, you'll probably also remember how soft and you know, almost free the upper felt. It had that almost like stretchy, elasticated feel to it. And I want to tell you that the Phantom 6 High is the same. It's not quite as soft, it has a little bit more structure to it, but it's still soft and malleable enough to feel very, very nice and comfortable out of the box, in the sense that it molds nicely around your foot, follows it closely, and there's still softness enough for you to be able to wiggle your toes with relative ease. So while it's not exactly the same, it has many of the vibes. And it is, to be fair, it is very soft, so soft enough. And in terms of this softness here, just to paint you a picture, to me it sits somewhere in between that very soft and free GX1 and a slightly more structured Lunar 2. In the sense that the Phantom 6 High is nice and soft and pliable, but it also feels like it has that little bit of structural integrity to it. And the good thing is that while it sits in the middle in terms of softness, it's actually better to me in terms of lockdown than both the GX1 and especially also the Lunar 2, which is a nice little thing. Now, one thing I've also personally really enjoyed a lot is the dynamic fit collar here, which just fits really, really nicely. It has that really snug, very close feel all the way up the ankle, where it just feels really connected with the foot. And I know it might not be for everyone, and not everyone enjoys the feeling of the sock, but in terms of getting that sensation that the boot is just almost melting and seamlessly transitioning into the lower part of the leg, it just has a very nice linked sensation. And to be fair, Nike just know what they're doing when it comes to sock collars here. And I also enjoy how it's ever so slightly lower than it was on the GX1 and Lunar 2, because it doesn't cover up the ankle bones as much, leaves them nice and free, and still give you that sock-like transition from boot to foot. So a very good job there. But one thing I've also enjoyed a lot is the slightly amended shape of the heel, where given that you have the sock, you get a nice snug fit all the way up the ankle again, which also means that it actually locks the heel adequately in place. And still, it feels relatively free because you have the cutout in the heel counter. You have that little bit of like standard Nike foam on the inside that just feels nice and, you know, familiar. It does the job. But compared to the Lunar 2 and the GX1, I just have a little less movement of my heel in the Phantom 6 High than I did in these. And if you know me, you know I love my heel lock-in, and it's a crucial part of the boot. So that little change is a nice improvement for me, and I enjoy that. Now, what you also get here is a slightly more, I would say, foot-shaped and accommodating fit. See, what Nike have done here is to update the last compared to the GX and the Lunar, meaning that it runs ever so slightly shorter in the length, meaning that it's actually true to size now instead of running a bit long. And also Nike have given you a little bit more volume in the toe box. And when you combine that with the good amount of width that you have in the front half of the boot, it actually feels really nice and easy to just slide into and feel at home in. It actually feels as if it's shaped after your foot. And yeah, it fits relatively snug around the foot, but to me, it was never claustrophobic. It just felt comfortable and soft but controlled. Now, another thing you should know is that, maybe you can even see it, that the midfoot, it just tapers a little bit. It becomes a little bit tighter. So for me, it fits really well. It should do well with most foot shapes, but if you have like a really wide or really flat foot, you might want to consider going into the Phantom 6 Low instead, because if you need that upper material to stretch, it's better to only have one layer of Flyknit instead of having the Flyknit and then the grip knit lace cover on top. So the Phantom 6 Low will just be a little less restrictive. But in general, go true to size and you will get a boot that actually, fits like it should, instead of running a quarter of a size long like the GX and Luna 2 did. With that said though, if you for some reason went down half a size in the Luna 2 or GX1, maybe you should consider going up half a size back to your regular Nike size in these. Because regular Nike size, that's the way to go.
But allow me to get back to the touch, which is unlike anything you'll find on any other boot, because it's sticky with this almost spiderweb-like feel to it thanks to the individually coated yarns.
And to be honest, it might actually feel a little bit overwhelming if you've never tried a grip knit boot before, because as the name suggests, well, it is grippy, where it's something you immediately feel when you make these little drags and cuts on the ball. It's not as sticky and grippy, I would say, as the first GX, but it's round about the same, maybe a little bit more balanced. And I'd say if you've ever worn a Mercurial, it feels a lot like that, just with grips added. And it's a really nice, slightly enhanced feel on the ball, I would say. Now, it works really, really nice in the wet and is also pretty good in normal conditions. But if you play on a really dry pitch or on AG, and you tend to hit a little bit on top of the ball, I've tried a few occasions where the level of grip has surprised me, even though I know the boots well, to the point where I felt a little bit stuck. Of course, it's something you're gonna learn and adapt to, but I just thought you should know. Now, apart from that, the touch feels pretty nice. It's relatively close, sharp, feels intuitive. Of course, you get a big clean striking surface because of the ghost lacing, and then you have this slightly firmer strike area, which I guess feels pretty nice when you strike the ball. But to be honest, I haven't felt it made that big of a difference.
The outsole is also new, just like on the Phantom 6 Low, where Nike have added another row of studs in the midfoot and toned down the Cyclone 360 pattern a little bit.
And I'll be honest, it's a pretty enjoyable outsole because you have, I would say, decent stability in the midfoot where it's rigid enough and slightly stiffer than the GX1 and the Luna 2, so that's good. And then of course you also have these regular 2 rows of studs that gives you a pretty good pressure distribution and actually also does away with some of the stud pressure that I got on it's called the Luna 2 and the GX2 as well for that matter. So that's nice and pretty balanced here. Whereas in the forefoot you do have a little bit of bite. That toe-off sensation where you have the blades that just connect a bit better with the ground. So pretty solid too. And in that sense, it's nice and balanced. It does a little bit of everything. Now, I will get some questions about, can you use this on AG? And yes, it is definitely more balanced than the Luna 2, which was a gigantic no-go for AG. But I will still say that because of the bladed Cyclone studs, personally, I see it as too big of a risk of getting stuck and getting injured. And especially since Nike are gonna make an AG plate that as always will be really solid for the Phantom, just get that instead if you play on AG. And leave this to the natural firm grass pitches.
However, it's not all happiness and balloons and confetti, because some things are a little bit annoying, and here are 4 of them that I think you need to know about.
And the first bit is this, the ghost lacing, or the lace cover, if you will. Because yeah, clean striking surface, cool. Does it look nice? Cool. But it's also just kinda in the way when I A, want to tie my laces, or B, even worse, I want to adjust my laces further down the boot, either loosening them up a little bit when I take it off, or just pulling them a bit more tight. And sure, it is a little bit stretchy, but getting my fingers all the way down, it's just a bit of a needless hassle. And I'm not really sure that do you really need to cover this part of the lace area up for having a cleaner striking surface? Not really, right? And it feels more like a cool design choice than an actual practical one. And secondly, there are these little Nike swooshes made out of hard plastic that I can feel when I touch the ball. And honestly, I just could have done without those pressure points. Again, cool from a design point of view, but practically, not really. Just take them off. And as I mentioned, while GripKnit is very unique and feels really nice on the ball in many aspects, it is also, well, very grippy. And sometimes that level of grip can surprise you, especially if you play on a dry pitch or an artificial grass pitch, to the point where you might get stuck on the ball and you might even trip on it and fall over. Is that a deal breaker? Well, probably not, because if you're like me, you'll adapt to it. But I can confirm that I have tripped on the ball and fallen over in front of my teammates and looked like an absolute idiot. So there's that. But that's probably just, maybe that's just my technique. And the final thing is that so far, the experience of getting these on has sometimes been a little bit of a struggle, because given that you have the lace cover up here and, well, the lack of ability to really open up the lacing so your foot can just slide in, it can range all the way from, okay, that was a little bit of a struggle, to, I'm actually never gonna get these on. Which, get a shoehorn and have some patience, because you might need it. And, I'll put on a lot of sock boots in my life, and these are not easy.
At the end of the day though, the Phantom 6 High is just really unique, and unless you're too stuck on the GX1 nostalgia, they're just a really solid pair of football boots that are very well balanced and I think will appeal to a lot of people. They're just easygoing and fun.
It just has that extra something that you can only get in a GripKnit boot. And if you're really into that sock-like feel with that very connected sensation, it's just a really well-balanced, solid little football boot that's just, I think it's really generally appealing. If you like the sock, that is. And to me, with the updated shape and fit and the much better outsole as a whole, to me it's just a more refined and slightly better package than both the GX1 and the Luna 2. And it still has some of the vibes from the GX1, which I really like. Now, in terms of choosing between the high and the low, I really like the dynamic fit color in the Phantom 6 High, but I'm probably gonna end up going with the low most of the time because it just doesn't have the ghost lace. So at the end of the day though, I think what really matters is how you want your boots to fit around your ankle, because both of them are really solid and I think they're gonna make a lot of people really happy. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section right down below. Remember that you can buy both the Phantom 6 High and the low in the link from Unisport right over there. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Leave a like on the video if you had a good time and enjoyed the content. And with those words, I'll be signing off. Cheerio. Nice.
National Geographic.